And I'll share my screen. So just for those who have joined just recently, my name is Heather Miller. I'm the program director with the Diabetes Hope Foundation, and I'm joined tonight by two of our program facilitators who are also recently graduated students. I guess that's fair to say for both of you who live with type 1. So we have Nathaniel and Rav, and I've also been living with type 1 for 24 years now. And we're just going to kind of walk through everything that I wish that I'd known before I started university, to kind of get you ready and prepared for when you go to school in September. Okay, so we just wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm joining from Toronto today, so I'm just going to do the land acknowledgement for the territory that I'm on. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. And we have people joining from across Canada today. So if you want to learn more about the territory that you live on, we always invite people to go to native-land.ca, where you can do a little bit of research and know the history of the land that you're on. Rav and Nathaniel, did you want to give a quick background about where you went to school before we jump into the meat of the presentation?
Yep, I can get started. So hi everyone, my name is Rav. I've had type 1 since I was 2. So it'll be 27 years later this year. And I first decided to, go to school at the University of Ottawa. So I'm from Burlington, so I moved to Ottawa for 2 years. Wasn't really feeling my program, so I transferred over to TMU in Toronto, obviously. So I studied occupational health and safety in the workplace. I also did a co-op program there. I had the unique experience of graduating during COVID and trying to find a job during COVID. So I ended up doing a certificate program in HR management. And I've been a part of the DHF family for about 10 years now. Again, coming from not really knowing anyone with T1D to being welcomed into this wonderful community with folks who have a lot of similar experiences and different ones has been truly one of the highlights of my life. And I'm really looking forward to our chat tonight.
And hi, I'm Nathaniel. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 11 years old, coming up on, I guess, 19 years in May. Yeah, I went to school at U of T's campus in Mississauga. They have a joint program with Sheridan College for theater and drama studies. So I went there, got my degree from U of T, my diploma from Sheridan, graduated, and then had a career for a while as an actor around the city. And now I'm pivoting towards social work and specifically with a focus on helping youth with diabetes. And that's what led me to DHF. So I am likewise very, very excited for tonight's conversation.
All right, amazing. Thank you both. So just a quick history about DHF. I know a lot of you have just kind of submitted your scholarships, so you've probably been on the website and hopefully read through our story. For those of you who aren't familiar, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary last June. DHF was started in 1999 by Barbara Pasternak after 2 of her 3 boys were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes within a couple of years of each other. After their world sort of stopped spinning and they found their footing, she started fundraising for diabetes organizations in Ontario. And in 1999 launched the Diabetes Hope Scholarship Program to sort of celebrate all the work that goes into being a good student while also managing type 1 diabetes and also support families with the extra costs that come along with living with type 1 diabetes. Through the scholarship program, one of the things she really worked hard at was bringing youth with type 1 together. For a lot of people, it was the first time being in a room with somebody else who had gadgets that beeped and needles they needed to worry about. So really kind of moving experience for people. And through that, she recognized that there is a need for ongoing social supports and sort of mental health supports during the transition years to post-secondary school. So we launched our mentorship program where we match up youth who are in grade 12, first year, second year university with an older student who's kind of been through the process to help guide them through it. They can give advice on sort of transitioning to post-secondary. Also, it's just nice to have someone to vent to when your endo appointment doesn't go well, or you can't kind of you're just tired of riding the roller coaster after having pizza a night out with your friends. So it's just kind of an extra person in your corner who gets it that you don't have to explain everything to before you start event. And then we've also started developing a lot of online resources that are available to youth. Most recently, we launched our online transition guide. So we used to put out this phone book sized transition guide that had information about every college and university across Canada. So it's got all the information about resources that are available on campus to support students with type 1. And in 2022, in November, for World Diabetes Month, we launched an online version. So hopefully you had a chance to check that out and do a little bit of research about the schools that you're going to. And we're kind of going to highlight a few of the resources that we have because they're all free and they're all designed to kind of help make it easier for you or your kids to move to post-secondary school. During the slide presentation, this is going to be a lot of information coming at you. We will be sending the link out afterwards. We are recording it, so if you want to go back and catch something that Rav or Nathaniel or I said that you just kind of need a reminder of, that will be available for you. And then there'll be these little icons, either download or the picture of our transition guide in the bottom corner there, which is just where you can go to get the resources that we're talking about. So if you see that on the bottom of one of the pages, you can follow that link and get more information about that specific topic. I don't know if we had any questions in the chat before we start. I'll check with Nathaniel and Rav if there's anything there.
Not that I see, no, but if anybody,
Okay.
like Heather said earlier, if anyone has any specific questions that you want to make sure we touch on today, please pop into the chat and we'll try to answer to the best of our expertise.
Yeah, you're also welcome to raise your hand or unmute yourself and shout it out. We're going to keep this kind of informal, so don't feel shy if you're someone who prefers to talk to type. I know, especially after sitting on the computer all day, it's the last thing I want to think about doing sometimes. So just know that that's an option too, and we will not be offended. So I know one of the first things that a lot of people with type 1 worry about when they're going to school is food. What am I going to eat on campus? How am I going to manage diabetes on campus? So these are just a few tips to keep in mind when you're researching the campus once you get accepted, or if you've got 4 acceptances coming in, congratulations to you, and you want to figure out what school it is that you want to go to. So a lot of you are moving away, so make sure that you research really well the meal plan options that are available. Most schools have multiple options that you can apply to, and some are specific to the residence that you're living in. So I went to Trent University many moons ago, and depending on the college that I was associated with, which was where my residence was, would depend on what my meal plan options are. So just make sure that you look into that before you decide which box to click and where to send your money. You won't have a locker on campus, so it's a little bit different from being in high school, where if you feel yourself going low, you can run across the hall, hopefully remember your combination if your brain's still functioning, and grab a juice box. At campus, you have to make sure you've got everything that you need for the day with you, so make sure that you think about it ahead of time. Check with your mom or dad and ask what they usually pack when you go out if you're not doing that stuff yourself yet. And just make sure to sort of think through the entire day, including extra low snacks. So I know I always had a couple extra juice boxes, even though it weighed me down a little bit. I just thought about it as upping my cardio. And just have some money on hand too, in case you need to pay for something. And just plan for at least one sit down balanced meal a day. It just kind of helps with your blood sugars if you're not snacking on chips or fruit bars or whatever it is throughout the day. This is kind of a message from our clinic partners that they always like us to remind, and it's an amazing idea. Just kind of check in with your healthcare team before you go off to school. Get brushed up on carb counting, because there's a lot of new foods that you're going to be trying. You're going to be doing a lot of swagging to figure out what you should be doing for your insulin. So as much information as you get ahead of time is great. And just depending on the campus you go to, and Nathaniel and Rav, you can kind of speak to this. Trent was pretty small, so I didn't have to worry about jogging across campus to get from one end to the other for a class. But if you do have a bigger campus, then just kind of take that into consideration for how much insulin you're dosing, how much food you're eating, to avoid going low halfway to class and needing to stop and stock up on some sugar. Rav and Nathaniel, did you have anything you wanted to add about your own experiences with navigating food on campus and what the options were?
For sure. So when I went to the University of Ottawa, I had specifically chosen an apartment style residence. So it was 4 of us. We each had our own rooms, 2 bathrooms and a kitchen. Again, very lucky to have that much space. Because compared to some of my friends who lived in shoeboxes, I was very grateful. And so that was kind of a good learning opportunity for me to buy my own groceries and really learn how much to get, how much can one person eat, and to really cook by myself. And if I had the chance to go back, I would definitely, spend the summer learning how to cook properly and less trial and error in the kitchen of my apartment. And then I was also a commuter when I went to TMU. So it's okay to like have snacks, like eat your low snacks if you're hungry, but just please always be prepared for a low, and keep all that, try to keep all your snacks on you. Or if it's, are big, they're heavy. If you're like me and you pack the world with you, kind of know what like nearby pharmacies or cafes are where you can pop in and like grab a snack, and you can just kind of sit down and kind of ride that low. Those are some like tips I can think of.
Yeah, and for me, similarly, uh, noting where on campus, like there's always a Tim somewhere, or there's somewhere with uh, some kind of food within walking distance of wherever you are. Obviously, keep things packed with you because you want to make sure that you have control over what you have access to, or if something's closed and you weren't expecting it to be closed. But there are these sort of fail-safe baked in, which is kind of nice. I was the opposite of Rav. I did live in a shoebox, and I loved my shoebox, but it came with having to go to the cafeteria for meals on the main floor. And I don't know if this applies to anyone in the room, but I'm also celiac, and that's often tied with T1D as well. And so that was also a concern about what am I going to do when I go away. And at least what they did at UTM was we were able to set up a meeting with the head of food services when we went and sort of checked out residents for the first time. We also made sure to schedule a meeting with uh, the people in charge of food, and we basically let them know my situation, that I was type 1 diabetic and that I was living with celiac, and they made sure that I like met their cooks who were there, and that everybody sort of knew my face, and they knew, and I knew who to go to if on one day I went down and there was nothing I could eat. Not that that really ever happened, but that I had that fail safe baked in was really helpful.
Amazing, yeah. So just kind of wrapping up with Rav and Nathaniel, you're going to be in charge of your food. So just going to be conscious of what you're eating, where you're eating. You may need to do some self-advocacy with new friends, new roommates about when you can eat. It depends on sort of what your schedule is and what works for your diabetes management. So just kind of be prepared to have those conversations. It's nice to make meals a social time, a social event. So if you have a few friends, just kind of say, let's grab lunch together. And then you're getting the food that you need to kind of energize you through the day. And it also doesn't feel as much like a chore. It's something that can be fun to do. And just be kind to yourself. So when you start school, your sugars are probably going to be a little bit wacky as you're trying to figure out new foods, trying to figure out your new schedules, dealing with the stress of post-secondary school. So just give yourself a couple months to sort it out, and just kind of be patient with your body and be patient with yourself, and give yourself the time to sort it out, like I said. We do have the Hope Connects peer support program, which I referenced before. Rav is one of our mentors, as well as we have 50 other amazing people who have been trained as peer support mentors. It's just nice to have someone again to talk to when things are a little bit more challenging. They can give you tips like journaling what food you're eating to kind of try and find a pattern to the carbs that you're eating. So if you're interested in that, we can start matching you up today, or you can wait until closer to school starts. And also on our website, we have the Transition in the Kitchen, which is a recipe guide that was put together by scholarship recipients. Raph was one of them. She's kind of at the core of everything we do at DHF. So it's just kind of quick, easy recipes. You can start practicing them before you go away to school. We have different I'm going to forget the word, Rob, so you might need to help me out, but there's different modifications. Is that right?
I was thinking categories. So, like, again, if you're gluten-free or if you're vegetarian, not allergies, there are a few more that I'm missing. That's the book's kind of categorized accordingly.
Yeah, and I think most of the recipes are adaptable to whatever your diet requires.
Yes.
Yeah, so just please be kind to yourself, and parents in the room, just be as supportive as you can, because it's like your world is kind of flipped on its head, especially if you're moving across the world, what will feel like across the world. The next thing we wanted to talk about are academic accommodations. I know not everybody considers type 1 diabetes to be a disability, but in Canada, it is classified as a disability. And with that comes certain accommodations that can help make life on campus easier. So we encourage all students to at least look into what accommodations are available for you, because it's better to have them in place in case you need them to not have them. And you may never use them, but just knowing that they're there is helpful. It's always good to brush up on your rights as a student with type 1 diabetes. So kind of familiarizing yourself with the language in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Canadian Human Rights Act, and then if you want to go international, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And we have information about all of those different documents in the transition guide. Prav, did you want to go through the different accommodations so people can get a break from me talking?
Sure thing. So these are wonderful accommodations that, you don't have to, try to advocate for all of these, but I would really encourage everyone to, because it's always good to have. So firstly, you can get additional time on tests and exams, sometimes even assignment extensions. If you do happen to come across an unfortunate diabetes moment, is what I like to call it, that accommodations can definitely help with that. You can get non-penalized breaks during classes and tests to treat low blood sugars. And I have heard of some folks even getting that for like high blood sugars, depending on how stress impacts their own management. You can get a different room to write tests or exams in. Again, if I could go back, this is something I totally would have taken advantage of, because I was someone who would just freak out, stress during an exam or a midterm, and the chaotic hustle and bustle of everyone trying to fit into a movie theater with those little detachable desks was a hot mess, and definitely doesn't put you in the right frame of mind. And a big one too is food and drink is allowed during class, and for any type of examination. So a lot of times you're allowed like a clear water bottle, so you'll have to remove the label, and that's all you're allowed to bring. So again, these accommodations, it's great to bring, a juice box or like a granola bar with you and not have to feel like, this shame or like you're sneaking something in that you shouldn't be. Then you do have permission to leave the classroom for medical reasons. Again, you don't always need an accommodation for this. If you have a smaller class, feel free to talk to your TAs or your profs directly. And sometimes it's easier to kind of build up those tools for self-advocacy that way. Again, a big one nowadays, especially with like CGMs and pumps and all the alarms going off, is to have that permission to use your medical supplies and tech during exams, giving them that like heads up that yes, I'm going to sound like a fire alarm, but it's not actually a fire alarm. It's just me trying to alert myself and like take care of myself. And again, then there is the guaranteed on-campus housing. So again, like I mentioned, I took advantage of having kind of my own room and kind of a more spacious area, and getting a personal mini fridge, which is what I took advantage of, which was like really great because I felt weird about living with strangers and sharing a fridge, with all of our food plus my insulin. So it kind of just like kept, me like peaceful, knowing that my insulin was just in my room doing its thing next to my juice boxes and nobody was moving it around. And then you can also get priority course selection and time specific exams. Again, it kind of does depend on how big your classes are. If you have like hundreds of kids in your program, then you might get away with that. Might be a little bit harder if you have a smaller group. And then you obviously get access to audio recorded and peer provided lecture notes, which I discovered kind of more towards the end of my academic career at TMU. So I'm really glad that that's a thing.
It's nice for if you have to step out to treat a low, to know that you're not missing like thesis of your professor's lecture. Just know that you've got it captured for you. And all this information is available on our transition guide. We also have a downloadable one-pager that's got a list of all the accommodations and the steps to get them on our website too, just if you look under the resource hub. Nathaniel, did you want to walk through the steps? Because I know this is something you've done recently.
Yeah, so I never took advantage of this when I was in my undergrad, but since looking to go back to school to get a bachelor's in social work, that involves getting a few undergrad courses that I don't have that I need for these programs. And so I've been doing some online programming. All this to say is that through Athabasca University, which is an online school, I went through this exact process like 6 months ago. And it's very straightforward if you seek to get accommodations. And again, it's really great to get them and not need them versus to realize you need them and then have to go through the process of getting them. Um, the effort on your end is minimal. The only thing that I want to stress is that it can take time as you're negotiating between the school and your physician and back to your school. So just getting started now or within the next few months, you should have no trouble getting everything all sorted up before school starts in September. So step one is you want to specify with the school what accommodations they have on offer and what they need from your doctor. So that involves calling their accessibility, sending them an email or the e-chat that you can do sometimes. You can set up an appointment if that's necessary. I've found that over the phone, whoever's on the other line has all the information at their fingertips, and so I'll just make notes of what I need. And once you sort of know, like I said, what they offer and what they need from your doctor, then you get in touch with your endo. If your endo, for whatever reason, can't do it, family doctor or nurses at the clinic, always try to have a backup plan of points of contact is just, I think, a helpful rule to live by. But you make an appointment with a healthcare professional, you let them know what they're doing. They have done this before, so they will know what to expect. And either the university will provide you with a letter or they will have a letter. There will be some kind of form that you will find at some point in this process. Just make sure that the doctor has it, and the doctor is going to ask you what you're looking for. So when my doctor was talking to me, I was saying, well, I don't want to lose time in my exam if I have to treat a low. I don't want to. So mine was very much focused on exam time limits, and so you can sort of cherry pick which accommodations you want. I'd always err on the side of picking more than you might need, just because you never know what's going to happen down the line. Then he filled out the form. He sent it to me. I passed that back to accessibility, which was, I think, step 3 over here. And then it gets processed. They have a whole channel of procedures that they go through to get you into the system. And then eventually you'll get a confirmation email saying you've been approved for accessibility at your school. This is what we are going to provide you. And step 4 is something that we've added as well. Do we have the resource live online right now, Heather? Yeah. So we have a letter that we've drafted that you can sort of fill in the blanks to send to TAs and professors, to your RAs, to your dogs, to whomever is important for you to know about your diabetes and the accommodations you need. And you just sort of it's like a little brief primer of this is what diabetes is. I might need to eat sometimes. I might make weird noises like a fire truck. And just sort of letting them know we've got that all written for you so you don't have to worry about it. You just plug and play, send it off, and it just elevates that level of communication between you and your school.
Yeah, so we have two letters you can download from our resource hub. One is the letter that you can give to your doctor to make it easier for them. So depending on your school, some have a form you need to get filled out, which can sometimes take an interpreter to figure out what it is you need. So just make sure you go through that with the accommodations office before taking it to your doctor. And then some schools will just need a letter from your doctor confirming that you have type 1 diabetes. So there's a sample letter for your doctor that you can download online and take with them. Just make sure you go through it and check off the accommodations that you do want to ask for, so that if you're not asking for everything, your doctor doesn't have to grill you on why you're asking for everything. And then there's also a fillable letter that you can, like Nathaniel said, just put in your information and send it to your prof. And we've taken all the work out of explaining type 1, so it's all there for you to fill out. And over the next month or two, we're also going to upload a letter that you can send ahead of time to roommates or classmates or any friends on campus. It just kind of explains what type 1 is, so you don't have to have that conversation over and over again. I think we kind of touched on all the tips here. Was there anything that you wanted to add, Rob, just about?
Yeah, so for any folks who are going into the sciences, sometimes you're not allowed to bring in your bag into labs, especially if you have a lab for biology or chemistry or any sciences related to that. For physics, I could get away with bringing my backpack in. So sometimes they do have lockers outside the lab, and it was like first come, first serve. So try to find a friend who has a locker or who has a lock on their locker, so you can kind of buddy up together. Or you, just a heads up, you might have to put your bag in like a separate like closet or room that's within the lab. But like it is uncomfortable to have those conversations, but it's so necessary to, you know, address your TA or prof beforehand to let them know like, hey, I have diabetes. This is a situation. I just need easy access to, you know, whatever it is you need for your lows. Again, it's uncomfortable at first, but like, again, it's a necessary conversation to have. And the last thing I wanted to add is sometimes there is this misconception that accommodations are like excuses because, you know, folks who have diabetes, it's like not that bad. Again, like there's so many factors that go into making decisions for ourselves on a day-to-day basis. There's so many factors that impact our blood sugar. So it's so hard to control all of these things. So whatever we can, you know, get control of, I encourage you to do that because it's just going to save you a lot of like time and maybe tears down the road.
And a lot of accessibility is about advocacy and self-advocacy. And like Rav said, that can be challenging. So I think that's one of the strongest aspects of that peer support program that DHF offers, is that if you find yourself stuck or not quite sure how to navigate, like we're giving very general advice, but when you get into specifics and you find yourself asking questions about what the next step forward are, having that peer mentor who's been through this, who can sort of analyze your situation as it comes up, is an invaluable resource. So please take advantage of the mentorship program.
There are also some schools that don't fully understand type 1 diabetes and they push back on accommodations a little bit. I very greatly doubt that you're going to come up against that, but if you do, just kind of arm yourself again with your rights and I was going to say rights and responsibilities, but that's the wrong heading for this topic. But your rights as someone living with type 1 diabetes, you can always reach out to us at DHF. We're happy to advocate alongside you.
Yeah, give me their email.
Just,
I'll get in their
yeah,
box. So.
yeah, we'll pick it outside or something. But just know that we are there to support you if you do run up against any barriers getting accommodations. And I know for the parents in the room, you're also there to kind of back your students up with that. I know accommodations is kind of a lot. Did anyone have any questions about this before we move forward? You can just pop them in the chat or raise your hand and ask. No. Okay. We'll take silence as a sign that we're doing our job well. Okay, health insurance. I know we had a question about this in the chat. So again, this is very specific based on the school that you're going to. So please start with the DHF transition guide. It's got a link to all the different health insurance plans at every college or university across Canada that has one, to start doing your research because it does depend on the school that you're going to. A few things that are standard is that there's an automatic opt-in for student health insurance. So they don't ask you if you want it. They just assume that you do. You need to go through the process of opting out if you don't want insurance. If you don't have insurance through your parents or through another plan, then they won't let you opt out of it because they want to make sure that you have health insurance coverage. If you decide to keep the student insurance along with your parents' insurance, the student health insurance becomes your primary health insurance. And then anything above and beyond what they cover would then go to your parents' health insurance plan. I know that's a question that parents have more than students, but just in case your mom or dad is asking how that works, that's how it works. Make sure that before you start school, you find out what that opt-out deadline is. It's usually within the first couple of weeks of school starting. And if you miss it, then you have student health insurance for that year. So make the most of it. So just kind of get on top of that ahead of time. There's also something, but this isn't at all schools. I know most colleges don't have this, but universities do, called a blackout period, which is when they're negotiating the contract for the next academic year. So it's usually about a month where you can't submit any claims. When you go to the pharmacy, you're going to have to pay the full amount out of pocket. Keep your receipts because as soon as that blackout period is done, you can submit them all to the insurance and get that money back. But just kind of, if you want to avoid doing that, stock up ahead of time, make sure that your prescriptions aren't coming due right in the middle of that blackout period. Find out when it is so that you don't get to the pharmacy and be surprised with a $300 bill because you're getting 3 months worth of insulin, as well as test strips, as well as your sensors. So just kind of make sure that you plan around that. And just sort of for who to talk to about the plans at universities, it's usually the student union who manages the plan. And at colleges, they're managed by the college administration. So if you have any questions, those are the people that you would reach out to, and then they'll either connect you to the insurance company or they'll help you figure it out through their end. So this is just kind of a general overview of what's covered by student health insurance. Prescriptions, vision care, dental care, paramedical, which is something that I never took advantage of, and I wish that I had, because it would have been nice to have some physiotherapy for backs that were hurting. Well, probably not backs when I was in my 20s, but backs now would be nice to kind of get taken care of. And then diabetes supplies. So some of this may be covered through different programs, through different provincial programs that you have, but just it's nice to kind of figure out what's out there and what is covered. A few tips from our alumni. Actually, I'll let Rob take this because I've been talking too long about insurance.
So one thing that I had to go through was when I was at TMU, I did a co-op placement in British Columbia. So what I did, because it was only a 4-month contract, I am with shoppers. So I spoke with my shoppers here in Burlington and I said, hey, here's the situation. I need to transfer my prescriptions over. What is that going to look like? And how do I make sure that when I go to BC to pick up my insulin and my test strips, like I don't want a headache. So how do we work through this? And so it was a lot of back and forth of that shoppers calling the shoppers in Langley and BC to communicate about like what prescriptions I needed transferred over. And it was fairly smooth. But the only issue I ran into was in BC. Again, this might be because of the specific pharmacy, or I don't know if this is like a BC thing. My insulin label is written as like use as directed, whereas the pharmacist in Langley wanted a specific unit of insulin. And I'm sure, as we all know, our insulin needs vary day to day. So I had to contact my doctor who was in internal medicine in Burlington and say, hey, like I need a prescription for insulin with like a vague range of insulin units that I need to use. So then they sent that to my pharmacy in Burlington, who sent that to the pharmacy in Langley. So a little bit of a hot mess, but I had insulin. I made sure that was kind of dealt with ahead of time so that I wasn't, at the last drop of insulin in the vial. And then I was still on my parents' insurance plan at the time, not school insurance. Everything kind of transferred over and it was pretty smooth in terms of getting my supplies on time. I had no issues of having to pay out of pocket. I did have to go to the hospital once in BC for non-diabetes related reasons. It was because I was going through just like weird chest pains, and it has a term and I don't remember it right now, osteochondritis, something like that. And they ended up just billing OHIP for that. So I was there, got looked at and walked out, and it's fairly headache free.
The other thing that you want to do, so get your prescriptions transferred and figured out as early as you can, because you may have hoops that you need to jump through like Rav. And the other thing is kind of schedule your endo appointments around the school breaks that you have. So I know some of you may have already transferred to the adult healthcare system, others may be in the process of transferring. So just try and get if you're going every 6 months, try and line it up with the summer and then maybe over the Christmas, December break, just to make sure that you're getting to those appointments, because you don't want to kind of lose that relationship with your endo. You can also, if you are moving out of province, look at finding an endo who's near the school that you're at, which again, you can, in the transition guide, we have all the different clinics near the school, where the closest hospital is, the nearest diabetes clinic, endocrinologist, the walk-ins. So you can do a little bit of research and decide what makes the most sense for you. And just make sure you know where the emergency clinics are as well, just in case you need them for appendicitis or something diabetes related, or because you broke your foot when you were having the time of your life doing something very fun. I
just wanted to add one more thing. So if your team has a registered dietitian, a registered nurse, and they do virtual appointments, I'm right now a part of a much larger clinic that offers that. So even though I don't see my endo like every 3 months, I still have a monthly check-in with my registered dietitian, and she looks over my numbers, and even if it's like a quick 5-10 minute conversation or like emailing each other, like that has been super helpful for me. Even now that I'm out of school, that was still something that I took advantage of when I was in university.
Yeah, and just a cautionary tale. If you don't see your endo after a certain amount of time, they won't refill your prescriptions for you. And then you have to kind of schedule that appointment to get your prescriptions refiled with your pharmacy. Michelle, I think it was, had a question in the chat. I would suggest it's probably fine, just like Rav said, like you can transfer it wherever Hadley's going. But just check with your health insurance to make sure. And the sooner you can do that, the better. Because I know sometimes when we're getting my Dexcom covered, it took like 2 months for them to tell me what I already knew they were going to say, but they had to go through like so many different hoops to get there.
Sorry, my daughter's going to be really embarrassed. But I'm just wondering, do I just give them my extended numbers, and is that like she'd go into a pharmacy there and I'd give them my extended numbers and they would just bill directly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rav, did you want to?
Yeah, so with me calling, kind of playing like phone tag with the pharmacies, again, because I just kind of stuck with shoppers, which was what made it easy for them to look up my file, look up my name.
Like you said, they won't transfer even prescriptions between, like, I go to Safeway in Vancouver, and they won't transfer prescriptions between the Safeways.
Oh,
So that's an ongoing problem. So
you can always ask, get your doctor to write a second prescription that Hadley can take with her.
Okay.
There may be a charge for it, and we should have mentioned that before too with the accommodations. Sometimes doctors charge to fill out forms or write extra prescriptions or stuff like that. So check in around that, but I can imagine they'd be happy to write an extra prescription if you explained why you needed it.
The endos here are pretty good about that. I have type 1 diabetes too, and I've had it for 50 years. So I've had a little bit of experience, but I went to school in the province. So
yeah, it changes things.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And just kind of referring to that, Michelle and Hadley started studying in another province. So if you're temporarily, and then this is kind of OHIP specific, so you need to just check if it's the same for all the other provinces. You can continue using the provincial healthcare plan as long as you provide supporting documentation to the Ministry of Health ahead of time. Like, don't do it a month after moving to school, like let them know ahead of time. And then the same that Rav had, she had OHIP coverage while she was away at school, and she was able to waltz into the hospital without having to worry about anything else. If your kids go away and they love it so much that the whole family is going to move to come join us here in Ontario, then just make sure that you notify your current Ministry of Health and also the Ministry of Health that you're going to be connecting to when you get there, so that there's no lag. There's usually, like it says there, a 3-month layover time, I guess. So just kind of be aware of that before you make the move and get all that paperwork ready and in place. And again, all this information is on the transition guide. And if you're not, like, if you don't like the transition guide, we do still have a downloadable PDF version, which I know I still like because I'm kind of old school paper. So if you have a lot of ink in your printer and you want to print it out, or you can just print out the schools that you're looking at, it is also available online. And we have a lot more detailed information in the PDF version about sort of rights of type 1s and sort of studying in other provinces and stuff like that, if you wanted to do a bit more of a deep dive. Any other questions about health insurance at this time? No? Okay. All right. I'm going to throw this one over to Nathaniel and Rav, just talking about type 1 on campus.
Yeah, so like we have here, it's important to sort of plan who you're going to be sharing your diabetes diagnosis with. Obviously, that's a very personal decision of how much you want to share with anybody that you meet. From a safety perspective, it's good to have somebody in your group, somebody that if you're out with people, we'll touch on that in a second, or just always having somebody else in the room know what's up. I feel like that's just something that we sort of already know and have been internalized as type 1 diabetics. But yeah, so like we have your professors, your dons, your TAs, your classmates, roommates, but really judging your own comfort level, how much you want to go forward and share and disclose. Mostly I would recommend something along the lines of, this is what a low sugar symptom looks like if I'm not able to catch it myself. If I pass out, this is where my juice is. A lot of those sort of building blocks of safety, but it's also nice to, I don't know, spread the word, to educate people. I mean, that's also a bit of a burden that we don't want to always have to assume as type 1 diabetics, of educating people about what our experience is. But I've found at least that people are very curious and want to know and want to understand what's up with their friends. So I'm big into promoting and educating. And Rav, you want to talk more about that because you did the Pump the Love thing last week or the other week.
Yeah. Like based off of my personal experience, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, not everyone is going to get it. And that's an unfortunate truth, especially when you're talking to like your RAs or your Dons. When I went to the University of Ottawa, unfortunately, I told my Don, like, hey, I have diabetes. And they could not care. Like they were just like, okay, like, what do you want me to do about it type thing. So I was in a position where I really had to rely on my roommates for kind of those telltale signs that I was low, or if I ask for help, this is what it means. And again, like Nathaniel said, like you gauge how much you want to share, as long as you kind of have like that basic safety plan in place of the signs and the symptoms and how to treat highs and lows, then, you know, you're pretty good. And over time, it will get easier to kind of, you know, bring up diabetes and advocate for yourself, to say, hey, I'm here. And, you know, you kind of learn to deal with the stigma. Sometimes it's frustrating. And we had a good chat about that last week. But, you know, you find your people and you just laugh about sometimes how silly it is.
Yeah, so the Pump the Love was a workshop that we did with university clubs, university diabetes clubs across Ontario, where we're talking about stigma. So I would recommend checking it out because it's just a good listen to. So just so everyone knows what we're talking about when we say Pump the Love.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
And I know one of the things that I've heard over and over again from the scholarship recipients and our mentors is that telling people at university is a lot different than telling people at high school. People are just a little bit more mature, a little bit more understanding. They don't make a big deal about it. So just as long as you say it confidently, and kind of you can do your elevator pitch in the mirror if you need to, just to make sure. I'm stumbling over my words all over the place tonight, but just to kind of make sure that it's clear and you're feeling confident about it. Most people will take it in. The good people will ask how they can support. The amazing people will start carrying juice boxes in their bag for you. And like Rav said, just kind of find your people and brush off the people who are not so good. And just, again, getting those accommodations behind you for when you're talking to professors and TAs who may not get it, just so that you have that paperwork and the university's support behind you. And if you do have any issues, go to the accessibilities office and say, Professor Black is not doing this, or Professor Green is telling me this, and then they will back you up and are there as an extra advocate to help you out as well. And just a reminder, we have the downloadable letter that you can send to your professors, so you don't have to have that conversation, especially if you're in a classroom that's got like 300 students in it. But then they're aware, and we like send that to them as soon as you start. Go up and introduce yourself if you can, especially to TAs, just so everybody's aware and knows how to help you. So this is just kind of for those who are going away to school, things to think about packing before you leave. We won't go through too much detail of it because there is the fun diagram that you can print off and put your little check boxes on. But just really making sure that you have backup supplies for Baqsimi, and I think I spelled that wrong. And glucagon, check with the university about if RAs are allowed to administer needles. I know some places they aren't allowed to, in which case you want to get the Baqsimi or the nasal spray glucagon to have on site. And just make sure that you've got the instructions on how to use it so you can pass it on to your roommate, to your best friend, to your partner, to your TA, so that they have that information there. One tip that I thought was really cool, and I wish I'd had when I was at Trent, is having a portable blender, so you can make yourself a quick morning boost of energy. Add a bit of protein powder. You can kind of get the fruits that really make you happy, and then you know you've had something good in the morning. Like Rav mentioned, getting that personal mini fridge for insulin and cold foods, and just make sure that you have somewhere to keep your low snacks, that other people are not going to wander in and start taking them. Put a big sign on the door, explain to everybody what those snacks are for, just so that when you need your gummies, you go and there's not just one tiny little bear left in the bag and all the rest have kind of gone on their merry way. Anything that Rav, you or Nathaniel had at university that was like a lifesaver for you when you were there?
Honestly, the best tip I can give is to just try to stay as organized as possible with your supplies, like keeping everything in like the same place. So again, I was fortunate enough to have a mini fridge my first year. So on top, that's like basically a shelf, the top of a mini fridge. So I was able to kind of, get my little containers and organize all my pump supplies, all my test strips. And that was also a good way for like whenever someone came into my room to study, or we were just chatting like as roommates, to just be like, I have diabetes. Like, I'm not making it up. This is a thing. And, I'm a firm believer, if you have like a clean space, you have a clear mind. And in the hustle bustle of university, that's sometimes the best thing you can have.
The other thing too is a sick day kit. And I know right now, if you're at home, you've probably got your mom or dad taking care of you when you're feeling like the world is sitting on top of your head. So ask them what to put in that sick day kit, things like soups, low blood sugar supplies that you don't usually use, like Gatorade or a sports drink like that is really good to include in there. Crackers, things that you can eat when you're not feeling well, and just extra keto strips so that you can check and make sure that your ketos are, or your, not your ketos, your ketones are not rising too high.
I also like
Um,
printing out. Oh, sorry. Oh, just like how my endos would send out, like, this is what you do when you're sick. I have that printed out and folded up so that when I'm sick, I don't need to stop and remember what are the rules again. I have it there. It's
Yeah.
handy to go. So it's a great place to have that.
Yeah, and then just a few things that again we have online that you can download. These are fillable, so you can print them down or print them or save them to your computer, type in everything so that it's legible. I know when I try and write stuff, everyone like has no idea what number is what. And then you can print it out, give it to your RA, give it to your roommate, put it up on your bulletin board, and keep a copy of it on your phone. So just kind of what to do for the different blood sugar ranges. You want to talk with your healthcare team about how to fill that out, sort of what the symptoms are and what the steps are, and make sure that you're clear on the action plan so you can communicate it to people who might be supporting you. Let them know, like, you're not asking them to manage your type 1 diabetes, just if you need help, this is what you need to do. And if all else fails, please just call 911 for me. And then just an important contacts list that you can, again, pin inside your cupboard or put up on your bulletin board. Kind of look up the local diabetes clinic, the big thing you want to have is kind of supplies for when you need to order extra supplies. So the number of the tech support, the sales support teams, just so you have all of that at your fingertips, so you don't need to be calling your mom at 11 o'clock at night, although she'd probably love to hear from you. She'd rather hear from you to say how much you love her than, hey mom, how do I get my Dexcom back in order? So you can download these again on our website, fill them out, print them out, and then you're good to go. Okay, any questions about dorm room stuff? In your accommodations, you can request to either have a roommate or have a single room, depending on what it is that you're looking for. So sort of think about what's the best for you, what makes you feel the most comfortable. And think about kind of sharing. If you have a CGM that people can follow, share that. Make sure you share it with your parents, especially for if you're going out or something like that. I know we have some students who kind of turn it on when they're going out Saturday night, and the rest of the time they're like, I got this, mom, don't worry about it. But just kind of think about who you want to share that information with, just in case of emergencies. Okay, campus support. So there's a lot of people on campus that you can connect with, both for social and then also kind of for support around your type 1 diabetes. So in Ontario, there's a lot of universities that have diabetes clubs on campus. Some of them are 99% students living with type 1 diabetes. Some of them are a mix of students with type 1 and students who are kind of in the medical stream. So you get to do a little bit of education in that place, because a lot of them are very familiar with type 2, which I'm sure is not a surprise. So you can kind of help them understand what type 1 diabetes is. It's a place to meet people. It's a place to kind of get support if you need it. There's a lot of fundraising and social events and advocacy stuff. Looks great on a resume for when you're applying for summer jobs or postgraduate school. Find out about the counseling services on campus. Again, you can find all that information in our transition guide. If you do start feeling overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, reach out. They're usually free. There's usually not too long a wait time to get into them, and it's just nice to have that support there to talk to before things get really overwhelming for you. Some schools have peer mentorship programs that are specific to the field that you're in. So if you're in the medical field, they might have a medical peer mentorship program. Again, we also have the DHF peer mentorship program, which our mentors are the best people in the world. Like if they gave out medals for best people, all of our mentors would get one. So if you're interested, reach out to me and we can have a conversation. And we match based on where you're going to school, but also kind of what your interests are. So if you're someone who's really into sports, we try and find someone else who's into sports, because how your diabetes looks is going to be very different. If you want to go out clubbing all the time, will not match you up with someone who'd rather just stay home and read a book or do a puzzle. So trying to kind of find people who you can connect with around more than just your diabetes, because we are more than T1Ds. All right, going out with type 1. I know there are parents in the room, kids in the room. I don't want to kind of put anyone in an embarrassing situation, but this is just kind of a walkthrough of what to think about when you're going out with type 1, if you're choosing to do any drinking or legal recreational drugs. The big thing that I really want you to take away and remember is just make sure someone going out with you knows that you have type 1 and knows what to do in case you need help. Let them know the symptoms of a low, let them know what to do if your ketones are going really high and how to help. Make sure that you've got extra supplies on board. There's a lot of really cute bags you can get that are designed for diabetes supplies, or you can just go to your nearest whatever store you like shopping in to see if you can find a good shoulder bag or a fanny pack. I know sometimes people tell me they're coming back in. I don't know if they really are or not, but whatever fits your style to have your extra stuff in. A little tip, if you are going low at a bar, you can get free juice from the bartender. So don't be scared to ask, just tell them it's a medical emergency. Go slow when you're trying new things. And I know I'm kind of coming across as the mom now, because I am kind of the mom of our little group here. Just go easy, make sure you're with people that you know and that you trust. And alcohol increases your risk for lows for the next 24 hours. So this is something that I was not aware of when I was in post-secondary school. So you may find that you're going low sort of the day after, right into the next evening. So just make sure that you're checking your sugars often. Glucagon does not work when alcohol is in your system, so you really want to be on top of your blood sugars to make sure that you're catching lows before they start dipping too fast, and being aware of them. And please set an alarm in the morning just to wake up, check your sugars, and then you can crawl back into bed and sleep the rest of the day away. Any tips that either of you guys wanted to share? Or any questions that people may have?
One thing I wanted to share is that a lot of this is trial and error until you get it right. And hopefully part of that trial and error is not going to one extreme or the other and something unfortunate happens. But again, if you have that safety plan in place, if you have your go-to people to check up on you, to call you, text you, to make sure that, you are awake, alert, checking your numbers, then like everything will be fine. Yeah, because it is possible to go out and have fun sober, or if you want to engage in other things, and to have a good time. But sometimes, with the Sunday scaries or hangovers, right? It's all trial and error, and you will get the hang of it.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Rav said. I think a good takeaway is that it is possible to go out and have fun both sober and engaging in other fun things. But and it's another burden. We don't ask for these burdens, but they just creep up. But I think being mindful about how your diabetes plays with all this stuff will also just help you be a strong diabetic. That's not helpful language. Well, I'll take two. Will also just help you with your with your management, but also will, I think, just help you as you experiment, which is half of what going away for school is.
Just make sure you're being thoughtful and have your emergency plan in place. And if you're going dancing, bring an extra juice box because you probably will trend towards low because once you start, you can't stop in my experience.
Depends on what shoes you're wearing.
That's very true. Yes, I will save my lecture for type 1 diabetics taking care of their feet for another presentation. So we just wanted to end with some communication tips because as you are going away to school, you're sort of shifting relationships with people back home and sort of starting new relationships with people at school. And communication really is key to everybody getting through this because that's a big shift for students. It's also a huge shift for parents. And when I think about my son going away in a couple of years, it just makes my stomach drop down 2 floors. So just kind of keep that in mind that even though as your parents we're probably driving you crazy, it's coming from a place of concern and love and wanting you to be safe. I don't know if one of you wanted to take this or if you want me to dive into it.
Yeah, I can take a hand at it. So just what the points here say of like talking to your family and friends and clarifying what you need is part of this transition is owning that interdependence, which is different than independence. You're not going out on your own. You're not alone in this anymore. And parents, your child is alone now without you. There is this network that you've built together, and it's going to be strained by new experiences and by distance. But that interdependence is still there, that you are able to rely on each other and communicate to each other as you're sort of just testing out this next phase of your life together. I'm going to go off script from the slide for a second and just talk about how what brought me to DHF is that I was a very, I guess, just a rebellious or not even a rebellious teen, but just not appreciative of the care and the anxieties that my parents were showing me when I was a teen with diabetes. And we've since repaired those relationships, but it was hard for a while. And I think what really was a big click for me in my early 20s was realizing that when my mom or my dad would ask me about something in the way that I found annoying, actually realizing that what they were asking was, yes, to make sure that I was okay, but also so that they were sort of working through their own anxieties of I've at least checked in with him. I've done my part. And so being open to that communication, being open to everybody's needs, it's new, it's scary, and setting boundaries, but also being forgiving because this is the team that you have for life, and they're there for you. Now let's get back to the slides. Yeah, well, it's a big shift for the family, and that's I think what I was saying too is that there will be growing pains. It will ebb and flow, and you're going to come up with your own solutions to whatever sort of communication issues arise. But the most important thing is keeping an awareness for why is the other person acting this way, or why is the other person reminding me of this thing, or why is the other person rebuffing my offers of help. And it's generally not personal. It's generally because this thing called diabetes is just heavy and hard to deal with. And when that collides with big life change, it's primed for emotion, and there's all kinds of emotion to deal with through that. Most importantly, also is safety planning, talking to your friends, family about how they can help you. Like what I said earlier, making sure someone in the room knows what to do if you fall asleep unexpectedly.
And just go ahead, Rob.
One thing I wanted to highlight is that boundaries can fluctuate. I know for me, because I'm the first one diagnosed, if I were to look at all of my siblings, my cousins, there's 27 of us on my dad's side, and I'm the only one with type 1. So it really was a shock to everyone when I was diagnosed. And so for my parents being immigrants, a lot of that care kind of fell on my sisters in terms of being translators and kind of like my besties that I would confide in. So my parents would really know how I was feeling and all that fun stuff. So when I eventually kind of gained that independence to like move away to like fully take care of myself, which includes like ordering supplies on my own, figuring out insurance. Like once I, that I didn't have to have those conversations with my parents, I just kind of figured it out. It was kind of tough for my parents to kind of accept and acknowledge that. But again, it's about, I'm doing this for myself. They built the foundation and I'm just kind of building up. And so that's been kind of a nice little like healing aspect of that dynamic. And like I said, it's super important to know how to order your own supplies and medications ahead of time. So during the summer, like take your kids and just, let them order it by themselves, right? There's automatic refills online. There's, you can call in and not have to talk to someone. So there's like so many things that they don't like talking to another person on the phone. I totally get that. So it's all about like building these skills and inputting these tools so that like your child succeeds like when they step out of the house. Doesn't matter if they're commuting or living on residence, because living with diabetes is challenging, but it's not impossible. And it's all about those fundamental tools to kind of just move forward.
Yeah, and I feel like we've been lecturing the kids a lot on respecting your parents, and just for the parents in the room, trust that your child knows what they're doing, because they do, because you've taught them. And just like Nathaniel said, it's about interdependence. You're still always going to be there for them. And the biggest thing that I wish I had had someone with me when it happened the first time was when one of my sensors failed, and it was the last one that I had because I had put off ordering something ahead of time. So just kind of preparing for the what ifs is also really good. And just kind of going through like, the big thing is, how often can I ask you about your diabetes if you're away at school? Like, don't start every conversation with what's your A1C or how's your numbers or what's your time in range, and just kind of navigate how those conversations are going to go and make time to talk about it, because you want to know and you need the information, and just kind of making sure that you're doing it in a way that works for everybody. Just another highlight of the DHF programs and resources we have. So I know the Hope Connect Scholarship Program has closed. We will be sending out notifications in mid-April about those who are successful. Our transition guide is a great resource for finding out information about your school. Our Hope Connects peer support program. So we have the peer mentorship. We also have a Discord forum. We do monthly drop-ins, so you can check that out. And then our resource guide online. If there's any of these topics that you want more information about, we do have 4 transition workshops that we recorded last spring. One's talking about food on campus, another one's sort of talking about coming out as type 1 on campus. There's a whole one on health insurance where we have someone from a college and a university coming in to talk about that. And then there's one about accommodations, I think is the last one. So if you want more information about any of these, they're all co-hosted by 3 or 4 students who are at universities. You can get to know the faces of some of our mentors as well. For those who are still in the workshop, we did just want to get you to do a quick survey. So I'm just going to stop my screen share and attempt to get the survey link in the chat. You can also scan it with your phone if you have it. And maybe also if there's any questions or any comments that you had, we can also take those now. This survey is just really quick. So let me just pull up the link. I should have had this ready to go ahead of time. And this is again, just so that we can improve for moving forward. Are there any other questions that people had or information you're looking for that we can kind of help, or questions about our programs? We also, I don't know if any, I don't think we have anyone in the Toronto area, but we have a new art program that we're launching called Free to Be, which is kind of a visual and dramatic arts program, just connecting with other type 1s and talking about what it means and then presenting that to the world, which Nathaniel and Rav are both going to be a part of in different roles. I'm happy to stay on and talk forever, as Rob and Nathaniel will let you know. So if you do have questions, please feel free to ask, or if you just want to chat. We've got lots to say. And if you don't, I know I always need a dismissal before I leave, so you're welcome to leave and head off and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you here. I hope that you had, yes, I can put up the QR code again. If I can find the right button. I hope we gave you some information. I hope you feel more prepared for starting school in September. And good luck with all your acceptances coming in and the big moves that are coming up and everything fun. You're very welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.